Okay, so now we're going to have a look at the colour grading. We shouldn't need to adjust this too much, but we just want to kind of compensate a little bit to make sure we're getting as much out of the cameras and the final bit we've got. So we're going to make sure we've got some whites and some blacks in there. Obviously, you can see lots of darkness in there. Now, obviously, one of the things I keep doing in Adobe, in Premiere, and one of the things you need to be doing as well, is making use of these tabs across the top that get into different bits. So when I'm doing my graphics, I make sure I'm in graphics. When I'm doing my audio, I make sure I'm in audio. So if I need to do any extra audio mixing, it makes it really easy to kind of pitch these things up and down. So, for instance, if I did need to kind of drop the speech here down a little bit.
So...
Oh, you. So there you have it.
There we go.
Sorry to inflict it on you again.
Hello, me little landlubbers.
Because we could easily drop this sound down again, but then at the same time, you quite often want the speech louder than the music anyway. So I'm going to leave all that kind of stuff by itself. But anyway, as we go along, we're going to go to the colour one. Okay. Now this colour one is really important. You've got all the different kind of functions on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find a bit, because actually in here we've got Josh, who's a bit dark, and we've got Jade, who's quite nice and colourful. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to balance it for this close-up of Jade here, because part of the problem we have here is we've got lots of different shots, and we want something that kind of matches all of them. So we're going to make sure we've got all okay here. So, right, where's my luminatory colours? So effects control should be here. There's the scopes. So if I do all panels... There we go, I've got my colours back. So what we've got here, this one here, this is the kind of colour grading. What's quite useful to do is make sure you've got skin colour on there. You can see there, that's pretty much her face there. That looks like her hat, stuff like that. And here we've got her thing. I think that is the white of her shirt across there. And the rest of this, that looks like the black between the kind of the poles we've got going up there. So I don't think we're going to need to do too much to adjust this, because that looks like a really wide band, but I'm going to show you what the difference could be. So in luminatory colour, you've got your basic white balance, so we could go in there and we could select, oh, that's white, bang. Let's see, that's made a slight little difference. It's kind of inched it up a little bit, so I think we're pretty close with the cameras originally. We've got our basic correction down here, which I always like to look at, and basically I always like to follow these down as they are. So we start off with the exposure. So if I push that exposure up, we can see, well, that's really bright, isn't it? See, this is where it's kind of, after, this isn't quite as good as certain other programs, because that should be reacting now, and we're not really seeing any reaction over there, because what we should be able to see is we should be seeing this changing live. Okay, now if I play it, there we go. So playing it live. So you can see here when I get the exposure, that's where it was, and I can pull it back a little bit. Okay, actually that brings a little bit more detail out of the white, which is good. Now I can also go down to the blacks and do a similar kind of thing, because we can push the blacks down, but we can crunch the blacks, so there's just nothing behind there. But I kind of like having that extra detail in there. So pretty much where they were is okay, but I'm just going to drop it down just a little tiny bit, so it's pushing that bottom bit rather than completely off there. So we can see what kind of difference it makes by just switching that off. So we can see that's lifted it slightly. Okay, I think that's working okay. What we can also do is we can have a look at the highlights, and you can see that starts to move the middle of that, so we can actually start to bring a bit more of the face out by punting that up a little bit. You can see that's pulled it up there. That's looking quite nice. We're putting a little bit more detail in the mids there. The whites, I think we're going to leave where they are. So that's pretty much it. I'm not actually going... Well, actually, we could quickly show you the colour wheels and match. So if we go into the midtones, we can really boost that up. And this is where we kind of start to get to some of the kind of... the heavier kind of guns come out, shall we say. But I'm going to pop that. I'm going to leave that in the middle. I'm going to keep that completely there. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to see what happens when I adjust the colour wheel. It's getting a bit laggy at the moment. So I'm going to do this very slowly. And I'm fully aware I'll probably end up resetting it. So I'm going to pull it over here a little bit. I'm going to see, you can see how that's changing it. And I'm just, actually, I'm not watching her. I'm watching the thing over on the right-hand side. So that kind of colour one. And I'm looking to see if I can get this skin tone. And as I get closer to skin tone, I'm glancing back and I'm seeing she's looking quite green. So that probably isn't working. So you see, and that's doing. I'm just seeing if there's any improvement in the colours. I go around this as well, and now I'm not really seeing that, because when I try to get that bit there to match up, I don't think that's her actual skin tone, or is it? No, I think it's there. No, I think it's okay. So I'm kind of slightly into the greenish yellow, and I think I've got that a bit close to the skin tone. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to check what it looks like by turning that off. And do you know what? I think I prefer it with the blues in it, to be honest, because I think there's a lot of purple in there, and I think a lot of that light is going on to her. So I'm not going to recommend doing anything on that bit of colour balance, because I think everything else is fine in there. I think we've got everything else absolutely spot on. But you can see there's a bit of a difference between that and that now, because the lighting stays not a huge difference. But I'm just going to check for Josh, because Josh looks quite pale in the background, but I want it balanced for her. So I'm thinking that looks
full
about right.
7 days. That's okay. Though. And is Tracy Chapman a favourite in the pirate?
No, it's
And actually, I'd argue, looking at the scopes on that, there's enough white. That's pretty much, you can see there. That's the background, and that's his head, pretty much in the colour. So I think that, yeah, what we can see there, I think is okay. And we've got the skin tone on that skin tone line there. So I think even though it looks a bit pale, I think we're going to accept that on there. When I go into the other one, I'm going to have a quick play in this one and see if I can lift that a little bit as well. So I'm finding a point where we can see the white. So there's the white again. I can see that on there. I'm going to go back to basic correction. I'm going to say this is white. I'm going to use that eyedropper tool and go, say that's white. I'm going to see if that made any difference. It made absolutely no difference. So it meant we had the white balance absolutely bang on at the time, which is good. I'm going to have a play of exposure, keep an eye towards this bit over here. So if I pull that back a little bit, so we've got a little bit more detail in the white. So that white is now no longer overblown, pretty much. I'm going to play with the blacks a little bit, so they're kind of not crunching, but also we've got some pure black within. There we go, that's it. We can play with the contrast a little bit. Can crunch that a tad, but I don't think we need to. We can punch the highlights up a little bit and get a little bit of extra. Again, that's not making a massive difference. So I think we've got plenty to play with, but I'm really struggling to see how we can actually improve this. We've got nothing to really save. We've got a good colour balance, and it's just making sure that we don't kind of balance it for one thing and then
there's somebody
lose
who's got to take
for
care
the
of
other.
it.
So, for instance, we don't want to lose the detail on the other bits. So, for instance, this one, when we look at it, we can see a lot of it is dark because, well, there's no band. There's not going to be lights on there. But we have got her at the centre, and we are getting quite a bit of detail out of her according to this scope. On here, we're getting quite a bit around the flesh tone thing. So that earthy colours are all in there. So I think that's absolutely fine where it is.